revolution becomes of primary value to the communists to the extent to which it can be used to condition the masses psychologically to accept the non-violent revolution, which is offered supposedly as the only alternative.
We were together, now we're nothing at all.
We've been through revolution before, America. We survived a civil war. And it was a revolution that started this great nation over 200 years ago. So, what's to fear?
Millions of dollars in property damage is done.
Broken my heart.
The plan is for raging fires from one city to the next.
Violent revolutions can be good. Our founding fathers were violent when they were fighting. Blah, blah, blah. That's what the uninformed say. That's what they say as the left slowly begins pushing that word to the forefront of our discussions, normalizing it. Revolution, revolution.
We are in the middle of a revolution right now. I know you can feel it.
And this time it's not just Bernie Sanders and his ragtag group of far-left radicals. No, it's the whole damn party. Well, tonight I'm going to show you why this revolution is nothing like anything we've ever faced before. I will show you why this one is dark, dangerous, sinister, and flat out evil. It is calculated.
The plans and preparations for a communist revolution of force and violence are far advanced.
So calculated that while the left sits back with smug smirks watching as we destroy each other on the streets, thanks to their plan, Trump will be the one who takes all the heat. The revolution will destroy all of us.
And it's nothing short of national suicide for us to continue to ignore their plans.
You know, Joe Biden should not concede under any circumstances.
So, to stop it in its tracks, the first step, understanding how it began. Because while we've been hit in the face with story after story and riot after riot and death after death,
come on, OG, stay with me. Come on, OG.
We've been left unable to sit back and truly see how all of this is connected and fits together. Tonight, the way America could end in 2020. Hello, America. This, and I didn't realize it until I was watching that. I feel like this is the culmination of 20 years of work. And I hoped that this show would never come. Let me preface everything that I'm going to show you tonight. I wish was wrong, but I know it is not. Tonight's show is so important that we are putting it up on YouTube. I dare them. I want you to censor it. Go ahead. Tell me where we're wrong. Take it down. And our attorneys will be fighting with you every step of the way. Show me what we have wrong. I'm also offering $20 off Blaze TV subscription if you use the promo code BANTHIS. We need as many people aware of this as possible, because how you react to it is going to be the key to our survival. Tonight, I'm going to talk to you about civil war and the destruction of America as we know it. I've talked to so many people at very high levels, and I've run this theory over and over and over every way I can, and with so many different people who look at things differently than I do, and none of them have said, no, you have this wrong. What they've said is, you've missed this too. Civil war, it's going to begin at the election. And I want you to take everything that I say. Do not believe me. I pray that I'm wrong. Let me know if we're wrong. Do your own homework. Trust, but verify. And if you don't trust me, that's fine. Just verify. And this is the most important thing. You are going to realize that your country is in its final stage. It is only in its final stage if you don't know you are being played. if you don't know what's about to happen. And if you strike out or add to the chaos in any way, you will be an accelerant on this fire. You must trust in God. You must pray like you've never prayed before for the next 3 months. If you are listening or watching me anywhere else in the world and you will recognize what I'm going to show you tonight, I ask that you pray for America as well and her people, because if we go down, it all goes down. Please do not add to the chaos. Okay. I know I don't need to say that, but people are starting to get at their wits' ends. I want to show you quickly what's been happening in just the past 2 weeks. We have to go to the beginning, and then in about 15 minutes, I'm going to lay it all out for you, and it is stunning. I noticed a trend about a week or so ago. It was from Axios. It ran an article on September 1st. A top Democratic data and analytics firm, Hawkfish, said in an interview on HBO that it was highly likely that President Trump will appear to have won in a landslide on election night, but will ultimately actually lose after all of the mail-in votes are counted. They said, and I quote, "We are sounding an alarm," very important language, "we are sounding an alarm and saying that this is a very real possibility, that the data is going to show on election night an incredible victory for Donald Trump. When every legitimate vote is tallied and we get to that final day, which will be someday after Election Day, it will in fact show what happened on election night was exactly that, a mirage." I'm going to, over the next few weeks on radio and television, I'm going to take all of these apart one by one so you can clearly understand, but I have to go through so much information today, so just try to stick with me. No surprise of what's going on here. We've known from the start why the left wants to fundamentally alter the way Americans vote. The last time it was attempted, I believe, was in 1865, where they tried to steal it from Abraham Lincoln. They failed and were exposed. If anyone is actually concerned about people not being able to go to the polls, you would tell everyone to take an absentee ballot. That is what we normally do. You wouldn't start a new system. That's not what they did. They started a new system. Okay, this is not like absentee ballots. They proposed mailing out ballots in mass, and that would give them weeks after the election to possibly pull off a little magic trick. Let's take them at their word and say they're not going to pull off any magic trick. They are saying to America, by the way, most important election of your life, we've changed it, so you're not going to know who it was, maybe for a month, maybe 2 months. Do you remember the year 2000 when we liked each other? My question now is, what happens during those weeks when the left furiously begins jimmying up the votes? What happens in the streets? What happens from the left side in Washington, D.C.? Look, I have no problem. If Donald Trump doesn't win legitimately, if there's something that the Republicans are doing and it's all exposed, and we actually look into everything, I will be the first to say he's got to go. If he wins legitimately, he's got to stay. I believe all Americans want a fair election. What's happening now is absolutely un-American and anti-American, if I am to quote the left from 2016. All right, then I saw a next story. A week later, September 7th, Chuck Schumer, Bernie Sanders have teamed up to war game what to do if Trump refuses to leave office. Sanders referenced the red mirage that Axios and Hawkfish warned about, that Trump would have to appear to have won on election night, but weeks later would have lost after all the mail-in ballots are tallied. These are not the actions of a party that expects to win legitimately. They see the writing on the wall, and it's no surprise who Hawkfish works for, both the DNC and multiple Joe Biden super PACs. Now, I'm going to come back to this later in the show. It's really important. But a week later, after Sanders and Schumer began voicing their concerns on Trump at how he may not step down if he lost, the Daily Beast then reported that Democrats were secretly planning for violence after Election Day. One day later, September 9th, the New York Times ran an insane story about what might happen on Election Day and everything that might make the election delegitimized, including the Russians, of course, false flags, disinformation, extending the vote, pollers getting a coronavirus, et cetera, unaccounted mail-in votes. All of this. It almost feels like you're being prepped for something big. It's almost, to use a California term that everybody seems in California to be comfortable with, it's almost like we're being groomed for something. We all need to be familiar with these two words: color revolution. And if you are watching in Eastern Europe, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They always occur after a contested election. The street activists come out in force the night or day after the election. Violence ensues. Government buildings are occupied. Eventually, if successful, culminating in a successful revolution. We have seen it successfully done in Georgia and Ukraine. And it was done by us in the State Department. It was attempted in Russia in 2011. We have been doing dry runs in the Middle East with the Arab Spring, through Ukraine, into South America. We're still doing it, and we're doing it now here. So what did Ukraine and Russia, what do those two revolutions have in common? The Obama administration, the Obama State Department, organizations like USAID and Nations Endowment for Democracy, and allied outside agitators like George Soros. The very same people and the strategy behind the Eastern European-style color revolutions appear to be exactly the same people involved in Main Street USA. I wish this was an outside enemy. I do. I hate thinking this of fellow citizens. But it's the only way to explain everything that's going on, and unfortunately, I have all the evidence. So everything I've been talking to you about over the past year, all of it is connected. And I want you to see, we'll put a banner at the bottom of the screen. It'll say the name of each show. Go to the Blaze archives and watch that show, full explanation. But we told you what Obama and Biden were up to in Ukraine. It wasn't about just his son. It was civil society 2.0 and the tech camps that were all about inciting revolution throughout the world. I showed you how the U.S. funds were funneled into Ukraine to support the street activists. They used people like George Soros to topple governments with leftist mobs and then rewrite their constitution. I showed you how Black Lives Matter had financial relationships with George Soros since 2015. BLM met in secret with Soros's organization, Democracy Alliance. Remember them? For later in the show. Soros was also outed via Project Veritas for funding Refuse Fascism, an organization created by 60s-era leftist radicals that support Antifa. Now put this into perspective. Remember, when I exposed the global plot to destroy capitalism called the Great Reset, do you remember the Soros speech at the World Economic Forum? May I quote, "The stock market, already celebrating Trump's military success, is breaking out to reach new heights. If all of this had happened closer to the elections, it would have assured his re-election. His problem is that the elections are still 10 months away, and in a revolutionary situation, that is a lifetime." What revolutionary situation before COVID, before the police, before all of that? What revolutionary situation? Why do you think that the Democrats still say that Stacey Abrams won the Georgia governor's election? She lost by 50,000 votes. That's not even close. Who is she? She doesn't matter in the slightest unless it was never about her. They wanted to plant the seeds of what they're doing right now, that an election could be stolen, and burn that into your brain. I will show all of it to you in a few minutes. Why did the Democrats refuse to condemn the violent riots? Why are they starting to push Russian election interference again? What was up with the ridiculous conspiracy theory about the post office rigging the election when the post office union endorsed Biden? Why did Hillary Clinton say this just a couple of weeks ago?
Joe Biden should not concede under any circumstances because I think this is going to drag out, and eventually I do believe he will win if we don't give an inch and if we are as focused and relentless as the other side is.
Is that the American way of elections? All of the same people are connected and they are all involved. Their goal is a U.S. color revolution. This is what they've been doing. This is what they do best. They've done it before and they are attempting to do it to us. They're not even really trying to hide it. They're expecting that you won't take it seriously. You won't connect the dots, that you won't go out and do your own homework and see in their own real documents, not from some blowhard by like me, but the actual documents, the video of them doing it. They're doing it out in the open right now. Why? They can't let it look like a conspiracy. We're being softened up and desensitized on what's about to happen in just 2 months. Everything now is a conspiracy theory. They want to remove the elected president of the United States, and they want you to believe that it was all his fault, that he engineered some sort of crazy election night engineering. It's really quite brilliant. It's insane, but brilliant. The entire plan hinges on two things. First, they're relying on us being stupid. Everything falls apart if you understand and recognize what they're really doing and you don't play into it. Second, they're counting on us not connecting what they did in places like Ukraine and what's going on here at home. And it's stunning. Tonight, I'm going to pull the curtain back on all of it. Who's behind it, how they're pulling it off, and the process has already begun. So if you thought the lockdown was difficult so far, you know there's some people in the government that are saying now that it will be 2022 before you're allowed to return to your life. It is crazy. Now, because we're all locked down, we're doing all kinds of things. We're not paying attention to, like, if I said somebody could steal your house, that's nuts. It's nuts, right? Well, it's not, actually. It's quite easy. It takes you about $40 and about an hour. All I need to do is get your title, and I could probably buy that on the dark web. I get your title, I do a few things. I'm not going to tell you what they are. It's that easy. Then I go to a bank, I take out a loan at that address. I use that address as collateral. You don't get the bills that, you know, you're behind on your payment because they've already taken it, sent it to a dummy address. They've taken the money, they've spent it, they're gone. But the bank comes to take your home. This is home title fraud. And the only ones that are really watching this now is Home Title Lock. They've been there putting a virtual barrier around your house. They monitor for any kind of activity. They see anything. They see your title being transferred. They call you. Did you just sell your house? It's Home Title Lock. Home Title Lock. Go there right now. The address is at the bottom of the screen, HometitleLock.com. Enter the promo code Beck. I've got to race through this next, but we're going to give you a list of where you can find all this information. But let me just recap, and then we're going right into what's happening. First, the intelligence community teaches a little formula for pulling off a successful coup in a foreign country. They call it the 3 M's. Before the CIA could even attempt to assist in a foreign coup, they had to ensure that they had control of the 3 M's: media, military, and a whole lot of money. Now, I want to make it clear, I'm not saying the CIA was involved in this, but you saw this play out recently to a T in the recent coup attempt in Turkey. The coup was driven by a large faction of the military, First M. Soldiers then seized newspaper outlets and even took over CNN, media. The coup sympathizers had plenty of money. That's what drove Erdogan to begin seizing the banks. It is very simple, but it is effective. But that isn't enough to take over America. This is how violent coups go down in foreign countries. And it's interesting how all 3 steps appear on my chalkboard that I drew up about 2007 or 8, when I realized we are being trained, we're going to go into revolution. How do we stop it? What do they need to take over? So I made these categories after speaking to several very educated people who are currently hiding out in universities. But these are the things that are needed by radical actors to pull off a successful revolution and upend a country like ours. I have the media, just like the CIA, the 3 M's. You control the flow of information. The left has already dominated this step. I can't believe what they're asking us to deny, what we see with our own eyes. And they have everybody: MSNBC, CNN, New York Times, The Washington Post, all of them. Independent outlets like Blaze TV, basically all that's left. You go to Fox? Okay, well, Roger Ailes left. Not the same network, good thing and bad thing. Not the same network. Rupert Murdoch is 89 years old, and his family isn't real conservative. I think the only one that's really putting the puzzle pieces together is Tucker Carlson. And the newsroom is exactly the same at CNN, and I know it because I worked there. I also grouped Hollywood in this first one because some people don't watch the news. They listen to Cardi B. Pretty much everyone watches TV and movies. And you can't indoctrinate just through the news. You have to get to the culture first. It leads. Democrats have infiltrated and dominated Hollywood forever. And the bias is painfully obvious. But have you seen how different television is? You can't even watch an award show anymore. You can't watch anything. Events like the Oscars and the Emmys, they're full of the left's. It's like a extravagant, leftist tent revival. But all the shows are doing the same thing. You control the flow of information and you control the culture, and you can direct the narrative. You also have to ensure that you can indoctrinate the young and the vulnerable. That's why you also need education. Progressives have been infiltrating colleges and universities since the turn of the last century. A new study published by the National Association of Scholars found the ratio of Democratic professors to Republicans is 12.7 to 1. And those are Republicans. I don't even know if they believe in the Constitution. They are indoctrinating young adults who then go out into the workforce. Many of them become school board officials, union heads, and teachers. I just spent 2 weeks exposing Marxism, Black Lives Matter, critical race theory, all being taught now in K through 12 schools. How is it happening? They are backed up by powerful, powerful unions. The most powerful union in the country is the National Education Association. It's the largest in the country. The next is the government. You have to have some players inside. Democrats already control the House and the radical wing of the party, rapidly pushing it further to the left. We're not talking about Democrats or liberals. We are talking about Marxists and leftists that want to overturn the Constitution. Now, that party, the Democratic Party, is gone. They're a Marxist party now. They have no spine against the Marxists, but they lack the Senate and the executive branch. But elements of the liberal deep state, or the Marxist deep state, are picking up the slack. The State Department was using a Soros-linked media tracking tool to monitor conservatives and Trump allies. And all of this, not to mention what the DOJ, FBI, and CIA was doing to Trump. I also have the military, and I'm going to come back to this. But multiple former high military brass have already come out publicly against Trump. In fact, one of them was, why aren't we using the Insurrection Act to stop what's happening on our streets? Well, you immediately had the Secretary of Defense come out and say, no, I'm not going to do that. That's just too far. Really? Have that conversation in private with the president. Why was that so open? And let's do this. The former military. Do you remember Lieutenant Colonel Vindman? We now know who he was. Oh, there was not the whistleblower. No. He was the whistleblower that started the impeachment fiasco. This was an attempted coup from within the military. Next is money. For socialists to get everything they need, they've got to have unlimited supplies of money. Well, not to worry, the coronavirus is giving them everything they could have ever dreamt of. You have the Fed, now the largest landowner. I've shown you in my specials on both Event 201, the coronavirus war game, and the Great Reset. This virus is providing all of the tools to turn capitalism into a form of national socialism, if you will, or Chinese communism. Have you seen what the Fed is doing? After all is said and done, the coronavirus response is projected to exceed $10 trillion. And people are starting to say it out in the open right now. The Fed is moving towards modern monetary theory. I believe they're already there. It's the belief that governments with sovereign currencies can print or coin money to support full employment or essentially any government program they want. When they've shut down all of our restaurants and our businesses, where are you going to get your money? Don't worry, from a Fed bank. It goes against every sane economic model in the history of debt. Does it mean nothing? What about inflation? Nothing. Are we the science deniers? Modern monetary theory is how they plan on creating the ultimate centrally controlled authoritarian welfare state globally. Now, you know why they continue to say we need to lock everything back down? Because of that. They must have it collapse. This is not my theory. These are facts. Go to the World Economic Forum's website itself and look up the Great Reset. They need also control over the police. What do? You got to gut the police. You can't have the police and the sheriffs being the last line of defense. This is why, one part of the reason why Black Lives Matter exists. BLM hits the streets and the mainstream media perpetuates the lies that all the police are racist. Democratic lawmakers then have the leverage to push things like defunding and disbanding entire police departments. They're crying out now in Minneapolis. What do we do? We're calling the police. They're not coming. Of course not. If that strategy fails, George Soros, while simultaneously funding Black Lives Matter, is also quietly buying up district attorneys all over the country. They're undermining police and completely overhauling the U.S. justice system. We've done these shows all year long. But none of these things are doable unless you have bottom-up street movement. They need people causing chaos. They need protests. They need riots. This is why almost zero Democrats in the media have condemned the rioting. They won't speak out on Antifa. They sure the hell won't speak out and condemn BLM. It's why the media isn't doing anything. It's how Wisconsin rioting can be called mostly peaceful, despite it burning down to the ground on television behind the reporter. Along with the media in Hollywood, they also need social media. Do I even need to go through that one? Google, Facebook, YouTube? When was the last time a prominent member on the left was censored for anything? When was the last time they were shadow banned or kicked off a platform? Some are doing it blatantly out in the open, like Twitter, doing their own fact checks. Well, their own liberal bias, of course. Others, like Google, are doing it quietly. As I exposed with Robert Epstein, Google is trying to manipulate your vote and the way you think without you even knowing it. Look at all of this. The left controls every single step to pull off a successful revolution. But that's my chalkboard. And it ended with compliance. You have to have a compliant people, not a people that will stand up. Not a people who will be the Tea Party and go out. No, you need a compliant people. And with COVID, you're wearing the mask. You don't want to wear the mask. You're not saying anything. They've put you out of business and you're not saying anything. They're telling you that your kid can't go back to school. As if we don't understand that there's been like, what, 5 kids in the whole world that have died from this? It's insanity. Our churches, the First Amendment gives you the right to go to church. Our churches are closed. Why? They got to get you to be compliant. Because then you can steal the country. Just look how easily we are willing to comply on everything. How easily the Bill of Rights was just shredded over a virus with a 99% recovery rate. The defeat of Hillary Clinton escalated their plan into revolution. It went into overdrive in 2017, and it will culminate this November. It's a multi-step process. In fact, it's 7 steps. And we're seeing it go down week by week, day by day. And the closer we get to November, the closer they get to pulling it off if you don't know about it. As I said earlier in the show, color revolution is about what they're doing. It's what they're good at. They literally wrote the book beginning with the Arab Spring. We'll show it to you next. I have such admiration for people who have lived in debilitating pain for a whole life, and you just don't know it. You just don't know it. For years, I went day after day through pain so bad I could barely stand it, but everybody around me knew because I'm a whiner. Then I tried Relief Factor, and I only did it because I had tried everything else. I had things that had worked for a while, and then it would stop working, and then I would just go back to pain. And I didn't know what to do. And the last thing I was going to try is something that we're advertising on the radio. What? I tried it because my wife said, I'm not going to listen to you whine anymore if you won't try everything, and I did. 3 weeks into it, my pain started to dissipate. I take it 3 times a day. There are very few days I live in pain. It's not a drug developed by doctors, and I want you just to try it. It's $19.99, so if it doesn't work, you're out $20. If it does work, you get your life back. 70% of the people who try it go on to order more. Why? Because it works. ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com, or you can call the number at the bottom of the screen. All right, told you how the intelligence community pulls off coups. I've shown you what is needed, what tools are needed for a successful revolution to take place. All eerily similar, and you can see what's happening now. But I don't think the left even thought they needed to do anything drastic. They have been doing this for multiple years, if not decades, to get ready. They knew that America doesn't like blood and revolution in the streets. But then something happened. Donald Trump. All was proceeding as planned, and then he gets elected, and that changes the entire game. He blew everything up, whether he knew it or not. The left has been using the word revolution a lot lately, and you better start taking them at their word. It's not hyperbole. It's not a new fancy word. It's the same revolution that revolution has always meant. Kerry, while attending a panel for the Alliance of Democracy, said this.
So we have major challenges, and if people don't have adequate access to the ballot, that's the stuff on which revolutions are built.
Don't have access to the dollar. Kerry was addressing a question about the American system in general, and threw that line in about not having access to vote. He goes on, quote, if you begin to deny people the capacity of your democracy to work, even the founding fathers wrote in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, we have a right, an inherent right, to challenge that. Wow. But for Kerry, all is not lost. He's encouraged by something.
What encourages me is this incredible spontaneous reaction to the killing of George Floyd by those police officers has unleashed a torrent of awareness that people see this unfairness now, and it's, I think, becoming a voting issue.
And it's becoming a voting issue. Wow, that's encouraging to him. A torrent of awareness and the deaths in the street. I think John Kerry knows exactly what he's doing here because he's seen it before. In fact, he was part of it during the Obama administration in 2013 and 14, but it wasn't here. It was in Russia and Ukraine. I want to show you a photo of John Kerry strolling through Red Square in Moscow back in 2013. Interesting time in Eastern Europe. Color revolutions were breaking out all over. When that photo was taken, Russia itself was at the tail end of their own revolution called the Snow Revolution. It kicked off after a disputed election. It's going to sound very familiar in about 6 weeks. And it was started by online bloggers who were suddenly very savvy on organizing massive protests using Facebook and social media. Wow, where have we heard this before? Oh yeah, the Middle East, the Arab Spring, civil society 2.0, and tech camps. See if this also sounds familiar. Russia immediately banned USAID and then kicked out the George Soros Foundation. No, I'm definitely not saying anything positive about Russia. But after knowing what we know about the Obama State Department now, what they were doing with Soros in Ukraine, I can understand why Putin was just a little pissed. But let's go back to that photo of John Kerry in Moscow. The man to Kerry's right is Ambassador Michael McFaul. Important. He was a Stanford academic that became the first non-career diplomat to ever to ascend to that post. McFaul took office right as the Snow Revolution was kicking off. Let's just say the Russians were highly suspicious. After arriving in Moscow, McFaul gave an interview to a Russian outlet explaining how he was different than other Russian diplomats. Quote, most of the specialists on Russia are diplomats, specialists in security, arms control, or Russian culture. I'm neither. I can't quote anything by heart. I'm not an expert in democracy, anti-dictatorial, revolutionary revolutions. Wait a minute. Hang on just a second. He's what? I am an expert on democracy, anti-dictatorial movements, and revolutions. Wow, kind of an odd thing for a newly minted ambassador to say once arriving in a country where they're going through a revolution. It's similar how the State Department in Ukraine was supporting the street activists. McFaul was hoping for meetings with protest organizers in the U.S. Embassy in Moscow. In fact, he met with opposition leaders before he ever met with Putin. Now, I'm sure he was already on Putin's radar long before he arrived as the new ambassador to Russia. In 2005, McFaul wrote an academic paper on what was needed for a successful color revolution. He called it the 7 pillars. Oh, I have them on my chalkboard. I'll explain it and how it explains this. If I showed you the tools a minute ago, this is the plan. Next. Okay, you just need to be prepared. There's a story up on my website about what you need to do to prepare for revolution. And it's not about buying guns and not about fortifying. It's about having your family safe and sound. You need to be methodical and not panic, and you cannot cause any chaos. One of the things that's going to happen is the access to voting, the access to the dollar is going to be your problem. It's going to be my problem as well. I've been telling you for over a decade that gold will help protect you. Goldline has a premium version of the coins that I buy. They're the $5 Liberty coins. They're amazing. Stellar condition. They're not $5 today. That was $5 in the 1800s. But it shows you really how much our dollar has devalued compared to gold. This week only, Goldline is offering a brilliant uncirculated Kennedy $half coin with every MS62 $5 Liberty coin you purchase. You don't know what an MS62 is, neither do I, but it's a higher quality coin. You can call Goldline, find out what it is, and if it's right for you. Pick up some free silver along the way with your gold. You need to acquire. I think everybody should have some. Call them. They're waiting for you. They've kept themselves open tonight just to answer your call. This special is good only for this week, so do it now at 866-GOLDLINE. That is 866-GOLDLINE. I'm going to try desperately to get all of this in. This board represents my board. Everything that you need to have. They have it all. Now, this is the Obama administration and State Department's 7 pillars of color revolution. The plan, how to use those tools, and then flip a country. All right, let's start with the first one. The first one is semi-autocratic regime. Well, we don't have a semi-autocratic regime. Are you kidding me? Have you noticed how many times people have been calling him a fascist?
I feel very strongly that this man has taken on strong arm tactics. And I feel very strongly that he
Got it. How many times have we heard this? Trump is literally Hitler over and over and over again. It's a meme at this point. There are books on it. There's daily news articles about it. And it doesn't make sense. The guy is not putting in the draconian laws, but they begged him to for COVID, and he wouldn't. So how is he the bad guy? How can you begin to make this comparison? Would Hitler have moved the embassy to Jerusalem? Would Hitler have ever been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, helping to broker the peace between Israel and the Arabs? It's so incredibly ridiculous. In fact, everything they accuse Donald Trump of being is what they do and what they will do if given power. Joe Biden called for a national mask mandate. That is unconstitutional. Donald Trump didn't do it. Why? Because he doesn't have the power to do it. He said the states have to do it. An authoritarian would have done it anyway. Many have called for Trump to send in the troops to quell the riots. Donald Trump didn't do it. Why? Because it is first a city matter, then a state matter. The government, the federal government, is the very last resort. You can't just send them in. Wouldn't that be what an authoritarian would do? So why are they doing this? Well, they need to portray an image to the American people that Trump is a despot. It's the very first step in the process, literally started on day one when he got in. The media compared Trump to Hitler the day of the inauguration. But being an autocrat isn't enough. For the plan to work, step two, he has to be an unpopular president. You have to have at least half of the country hating him. Remember this?
I'm Keith Olbermann, and this is The Resistance. I am confident now, even more so than I have been throughout the last year, that this nightmare presidency of Donald John Trump will end prematurely and end soon. And I am thus also confident that this is the correct moment to end this series of commentaries.
Talk about it not aging well. All right. So what do you have? You have somebody who's very unpopular. Look how produced that segment is. Everything from the colors on the set, Olbermann's suit. The videos were designed to engage as many people as possible, to keep them engaged and have them coming back for more. Hashtag the resistance. It started on day one and spread like a wildfire all over the place. The resistance hit Trump for everything he did. He was constantly under attack by design, but it was always void of facts. It didn't matter. It rarely does. They needed to divide the base, and look around. They got it. Keith Olbermann knew that the Russia collusion narrative was full of crap. That's why he abruptly ended the resistant videos prematurely before a verdict came out. Remember, when Trump ended DACA back in 2017, the waves of protests that followed, the left was quick to capitalize on this by doing what they do best, pissing people off and getting them out in the streets. But they never provided context for what Trump was actually doing. In fact, look at the headline. Calls on Congress to act. The story wasn't Trump ends DACA. The real story was that Trump gave the power Obama stole from the Congress back to them. Who's the authoritarian in this? The one who seized the power or the one who gave it back? But they never give context because that's not what's needed. They need the appearance of Trump being an unpopular Hitler. Kind of puts organizations like the Lincoln Project and the Never Trumpers in a whole new light, doesn't it? What drives their hatred for Donald Trump? It's irrational. Or is it just part of the 7 pillars of color revolution? Next, they needed a united and organized opposition. Got to have that. Do they have it? Ever heard of Antifa? Before Trump became a GOP nominee in 2016, Antifa was small time, but now they're everywhere. This is T. Stern, an organizer with Refuse Fascism. Listen.
The ultimate vision is for people to break with their comfort and come into the streets day after day, night after night, in the hundreds of thousands until the millions, and not leave until they have to step down.
Earlier, she had admitted that she had been given funding from George Soros, the organization that supports Antifa. Now we see in this video that the ultimate goal, and I'm using her words here, is to get thousands and millions into the streets to force elected officials to step down. Keep in mind, this was before George Floyd, and we can't forget about Black Lives Matter, the Marxist organization, something the media will never say. They'd all but died out after 2015. We barely even heard from them. But after George Floyd, like Antifa, they were all over the place. And what were they protesting anymore? It's not about George Floyd. They protest cops when people try to kill cops, like what happened in Lancaster. All of this is to set up, or the preamble. They're organizing and building a network for something much larger in December. So far, they have this one, and this one. Now they need an effective media system to convince prior to the election that there is voter fraud that is coming. Well, that's really important. Do they have any of those? They're being brought in to help. Journalist Stacey Lennox over at PJ Media recently identified this group as the Momentum Community. They're veterans of Occupy Wall Street that have trained street activists all over the country. The website lists the Marxist group they train, including working families, Black Lives Matter, the Sunrise Movement. The Sunrise Movement has been helping push the Green New Deal. Where does Momentum Community get their inspiration? Check it out from their own website. Momentum synthesizes the lessons of various 20th century movements, including the color revolutions of Eastern Europe, the Arab Spring in North Africa. Now, we got all of these. How about this one? An ability to drive home. That voting results are going to be falsified. This is where preparation turns into action. This is what's planned for election night. This is why the Democrats radically push for mass mail-in voting. It's why the Postal Service conspiracy was born. The entire reason for the Axios article I showed you earlier was meant to perpetuate it. But it's the reason why Bernie Sanders and Chuck Schumer also made it public that they were making plans just in case Donald Trump doesn't step down. They need to give the bottom-up street thugs a green light to let them know you've got our support from the top. It's signaling top down, ready to go, bottom up. Number 5, easy. Independent media to inform citizens about the falsified vote. Gee. What do you think? Do they have this one too? Yeah, in fact, they have something where they can just tell us, like me, if I try to tell you that this is what's going on after the election and Trump is winning, we'll be silenced. That news from an article in the New York Times I showed you earlier not only shows you how ridiculous they are, but they're playing right along with Obama's 7 pillars. They've already been prepping and are ready to unleash on election night. The last 2 in a minute. These shows are just never long enough to go through it. The last 2, political opposition able to mobilize thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, and division among the military and police. They have all of these. I ran out of time. I'm going to spend an extra 15 minutes with Blaze subscribers. If you're a Blaze subscriber, just keep watching. It's going to track right into it. If you're not, please join us. Please join us at blazetv.com/Glenn. Use the promo code BANTHIS and save $20 off your year's subscription. But please join us. You need to share this with all of your friends. More online only in a minute.